Back in the 60s, when dinosaurs filled the skies, if we needed to find information, we hied ourselves to ye olde encyclopedias, if we had a set, or over to the local library. We had to want and work for every nugget. Now, a little Googling, some AIing, or if that's all too fancy for you, a visit to Wikipedia, and poof, you have your answer. Not too much work at all. And that's becoming a problem. We are in danger of losing a vital survival skill: memory. It's not about what you want to know, it's about how you come to know it. Let's talk about it and how we might improve. Hello friends, thanks for stopping by. I'm CJ, and we're going to look at what has happened to knowledge access and how it affects us when we don't have to work at finding it, and how we can do better. This is a subject that's near and dear to me. So much of my life has been spent searching, finding, and disseminating knowledge. I very much took to heart the quote on a bookmark I saw when I worked in my junior high school library. Half of all knowledge is knowing where to find it. Of course, the other half is remembering it. Stick around and I'll give you a couple of tips to help with that. But back then, you had to put forth some effort to find that knowledge. Now, well, it's different. The question is, does it matter? Before everything was indexed and searchable, we lived in the era of unresolved questions. You'd be sitting with friends and someone would ask a question like, which U.S. state is the closest to Africa? You'd throw out names, you would argue, and then usually you just lived with the mystery or accepted that it must be Florida. It might nag at you for a week, a year, or more until you stumbled across the answer in a book or a conversation. But that nagging was a good thing. It kept your curiosity active. And if you did go to look it up, you inevitably fell down the rabbit hole. You'd open a dictionary or an encyclopedia to find one word or fact, and you'd emerge an hour later having jumped from word to word or article to article. You'd set out to learn about volcanoes and ended up knowing the history of the steam engine. You were a pilgrim of knowledge. Today, we aren't wanderers, we're commuters. We go straight to the destination, get the fact, and get out. No detours. We don't even see the scenery anymore. The need for knowledge lookup was no more keenly felt than in pubs and bars. As the tabs grew larger and the inhibitions dropped lower, the great questions of the day would be offered and bets put down. What's the fastest animal? Who's the tallest man? Did Gone with the Wind make more money than The Wizard of Oz? Is the golden plover or the red grouse the fastest game bird in Europe? That last question accidentally spurred Sir Hugh Beaver, the managing director of Guinness breweries, to action in 1951. He commissioned Ross and Norris McWhirter to compile a reference book that would be distributed to pubs across Britain and Ireland. You may know it now as the Guinness Book of World Records. It didn't answer everything, but it was a start. And there were other books, World Almanac and Book of Facts, this one from 2026, and independent compilations like the People's Almanac in 1975. The numbers of books show how hard it was to find factual information and how desperate we were for quick access. Today, that's all but unthinkable unless you've lost your phone. From search engines to Wikipedia to various archives and more, a large amount of all of the world's accumulated knowledge is available in seconds. And that access is the heart of the problem. 40 or 50 years ago, the issue hadn't quite reared its head. After all, access to information wasn't quite as smooth. We held on to our unanswered questions until we found relief in a book, a librarian, or a similar font of knowledge. For many of the people that knew me, I was that font. Back then, it was not uncommon for me to get a call about general knowledge or technical questions. More often than not, I had an answer on the spot, but sometimes I'd have to look it up and get back to them, which usually only took a couple of minutes because I knew where to find what we needed. After all, that's half of all knowledge, isn't it? Once the internet, and especially the web, started getting populated with data, human resources like me became less necessary. That doesn't mean we disappeared. We still love the research for its own sake. But for the vast majority of people, they don't have to call a friend or trek to the library anymore. Now, you just have to ask and you get answers. It makes how we used to do it seem pretty inefficient. But those inefficient methods were also more likely to get the information to stick in your brain. Why? Because you had to work for it. It's kind of as simple as that. Whether it's mind or body, if you don't use it, you lose it. It's almost an axiom that you tend to remember stuff better if you do instead of just being told. You spent a little, in this case effort, and you got a little, in this case knowledge. Pretty fair trade. There have been recent studies noting that handwriting, as in taking class notes, leads to more neural connections than typing on a digital device does. It's interesting that there seems to be a correlation between neural connections and the ease of gathering the source material. Similarly, in the last 20 years, something fundamental shifted in how we relate to information. Researchers actually have a name for it, the Google effect. The basic idea is that when we know we can look something up easily, we're less likely to bother storing it in our own memory. Why remember something when you can just retrieve it? It's perfectly understandable. It's efficient in the short term. It's the long term that's the issue, especially if you've never known anything different. So if it's such a problem, what can you do to help yourself out? Well, small things. And you don't have to go totally old school. First, when you've looked something up, handwrite a note. Don't just copy, reword what you learned and jot it down. You don't have to write a novel, just a phrase. It's a physical act combined with the rethink that forces your brain to process the information differently than just typing. Another step, go down some rabbit holes on purpose. For example, on the Wikipedia homepage, click on a random "on this day" or "did you know" link. Don't do it to memorize a list. It's just reading. You're doing it to pour a foundation in your mind that can support the stuff you want to stick around for a spell. And remember, it isn't all or nothing. Just because you look it up online doesn't mean you're just going to forget it right away. That's silly. It's just that if you put in some effort, it eventually pays off. And just so you know, I didn't love having to trudge down to the library or dive into the card catalog. It was often a pain in the ass, but if you needed to access more information than your house could provide, that was pretty much your only option. And before I leave, I want to get a little more personal again. When I was very young, I'd ask my parents questions. Apparently a lot of questions. And they'd inevitably tell me to go look it up. So I got good at looking it up and didn't pester them so much. Later, as a side project, in the summer between 4th and 5th grade, I read all of the set of Collier's encyclopedia that we had at home. Here's one of the 20 volumes. Well, 19. The 20th was the index. Did I understand all of it? No, of course not. And it was tiring. But it built a scaffold which made understanding other stuff in the future a lot easier because I had something to connect it to. I love having Wikipedia and AI at my fingertips. But I also have the foundation of having learned how to learn the hard way. I'd like to hear from both young and old alike on this. Do you feel that the learning experience now is comparable to back then? Do you think it's better now and we oldsters have just missed something? And in your journeys through the data, what nuggets of info have surprisingly stuck with you? The comment section is thirsty for your insights. So, until we meet again, I'm CJ, this is Geezer Gab, reminding you that liking is groovy, subscribing is far out, and knowing that the plover is faster than the red grouse puts you in a special group of data files. See ya. So, some of you may be wondering how a 10-year-old could read a set of encyclopedias in a summer. That's like 3 of these volumes every 2 weeks. Well, first, I was reading way above my grade level, which really annoyed my teachers. Second, the type isn't too small. Third, I'd already read a lot of the articles, so I could skip over most of those. And fourth, I knew about President Kennedy's speed reading, and I employed a similar tactic. While you retain information, it's not as much as when you read normally, but it was fine. Lastly, some of the very technical articles were way above a 10-year-old's pay grade, so I didn't linger on them too much. And while this reference served me well through my school years, these were actually a lot more useful. Still are once you dive in. Ooh,